Hi, Katisha. Thank you so much for agreeing to be interviewed as part of this the Business of Impact interview series. Essentially, we are going behind the curtain of running nonprofit organizations. And so I'm super excited to speak with you. The purpose of this series is to really highlight what it truly takes to run a nonprofit organization and what some of those back office tasks and processes are, and pretty much how to maintain the business aspect of running organizations. And so just to give people a little bit of background, we met in a Facebook group, and I was intrigued by the service you provide to nonprofits, especially given that so many people are now working virtually due to the pandemic. You mostly hear about like grants and fundraising and things like that when you think about nonprofits, but very little about the things behind the scenes like accounting, HR, team management. And so I want to dive in a little bit more about what it is that you do. So just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do for nonprofit organizations.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. My name is Katisha Rawls. I am a former foster care and adoption social worker. And now I am an Asana certified pro, so I provide Asana consulting and training for nonprofits. I spent most of my career in foster care, adoptions, and community-based services like in-home counseling, day treatment, and mental health support services. But I had my second child 3 years ago and decided it's time to stay home. And so that is why I ended up starting a business. But like over the last 3 years, I've been trying to figure out how to align my business with like my background in social work and social change and things like that. And just this year, I landed on nonprofits. Like over the past few months, I've been working with nonprofits because they were struggling with that team management aspect, just collaborating and managing their projects together, especially those that are working remotely. And so when I saw like an increase in that need, last year, I was just thinking, businesses need this. And so I was working with like service-based businesses. And then towards the end of the year, I started getting more inquiries from nonprofits, and I realized this is a need, and this really aligns better with my background. And so that's how I started working with the nonprofits with onboarding their teams to Asana.
Nice. It's funny you said that because I just started working with a client, and one of the first things that they asked me was, "Are you familiar with Asana? We just started using it." And so when I saw what you were doing, I was like, "That's affirming," because there really are a lot of organizations who are now working remotely, and so they need a way to manage their team and their tasks. And so I think that more nonprofits anyway should adapt certain technologies. And so I always get excited when I hear that they are utilizing these different things. And so what do you love most about what you do?
I would say I love just watching them realize, like have those light bulb moments, like, this is going to make our work so much easier, like a lot of times when my clients come to me, they're struggling with just like a lot of back and forth emails about different programs and projects that they're working on, and, information getting lost. And ultimately, when you are struggling to manage your programs, it impacts the people that you serve. And so when I see them light up like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so much easier and we'll be able to provide our programs, like things will run a lot smoother. Just seeing those moments and even them realizing how it's going to affect them in the day to day, like burnout is real. And, when people in this field are like burned out, it really impacts the quality of the programs and services that they're providing to the community. And so I think that just realizing like, I don't have to stress every day. Like I can use this program, this technology, and just make my day so much smoother. When I just see them get excited about that, to me, it just makes me feel like this is why I do what I do,
Yeah, as someone who also worked internally, I always joke about the fact that that nonprofits love meetings and they love email. Like and the meetings were always so long, right? And so I think that And so hearing you speak about that is like, it's so true. And I always felt like there has to be a better way for us to manage all of the different things that we have going on versus having a meeting or having, numerous email chains back and forth and things getting lost. And, I also think that too, like in the nonprofit space, it's no secret that usually they're short staffed, right? And so with people already kind of being overworked, the also have not having like proper management as far as like workload and how you do your work and stuff like that, I think adds to that burnout. And so I feel like implementing something, just as simple as a team project management tool can help ease some of that, right? Them knowing that there's a central place where they can actually access their tasks or communicate to say where things are, like, is like a breath of fresh air. Do you find that there are any, because at least historically, a lot of nonprofits are so used to doing things like in-house and manually. Did you find that there are challenges with having them switch over to like this cloud-based tool?
A lot of my clients, when they come to me, they're using spreadsheets, right, to manage those dates. And you have like managers who are like, okay, I'm over this. We need to do something different. But then you have staff members who are like, what is the point? They're like, how is this going to help me? Like, I don't want to, they're worried that they're going to be doing double work, especially when people kind of get into their own group. We all have our own way of managing our work and our to-do list. And so like yesterday, one of my clients, I was having a one-on-one with one of her staff members. And she's like, I write everything down in my notebook and, I'm like, I don't see the point in putting that in Asana. So there is some resistance, like when people just like with any change, really, it's changing old habits and developing new habits. There's going to be resistance, right? And it's really about just helping them see, like, what is in it for me? Like, why do we need this? And why do we need it now? What's wrong with the way we're doing things already? So really just highlighting the benefits of how it's going to impact individuals and the organization. I found like sometimes when we're trying to get people to use a new software, like organizations to use a new software, it's easy to focus on the high level benefits for the organization as a whole. But we have to realize that we're asking people to change how they work. So we have to be able to communicate to them why it's going to be beneficial for them as well. That's just like if I'm like, oh, I want to lose weight. Somebody's gonna have to tell me, like, okay, girl, this is why. This is why you need to do this. Like, I'm not just gonna hire a personal trainer because you said I need to hire you to get in shape. Like, okay, I need to know the benefits. So it's the same thing when we're trying to get them to utilize this technology. And, the reality is we use technology every day anyway. Like, most people have a smartphone nowadays. So just helping them realize, like, okay, think about your smartphone and all the things you do on your smartphone if you didn't have that. Just kind of helping them see those different benefits. I'm rambling a little bit.
No, this is good. It's funny you said that because I have a past client who, I don't know if you're familiar with Smartsheet. And so in a way, I guess it's similar to Asana. Like there's so many project management tools now, but they were looking to use Smartsheet and so many people were like, why can't I just send an email? And so having used Smartsheet, I was sitting in on a finance meeting, and specifically there's a woman who was managing like contracts, and she was like, I just prefer to email the controller. And so I was like, well, think about it like this. This person is leading the finance team. So not only are they getting emails from you, they're getting emails from the auditors, from leadership, so it's like, while it also may be quote unquote easy for you, but then think about the person on the other end who has to sort through these emails. If they forget something, who has to then go back and like read through all of these chains. I'm like, it not only is for you, but it's for the team as a whole to be able to work better and to think about how we can lighten the load for some of the higher ups, but then also make it easier so that you don't spend too much time explaining and things like that. I was like, because if you finish a task, you can just mark it off and he'll know it's done versus you having to send an email and say that, so sometimes kind of like you said, just kind of really helping them to see like drill down into the specifics and not always looking at it from such the bird's eye view, because sometimes they really don't get how it affects them personally. And so that was a really good point. So I'm a huge proponent of like cloud technology and like automation, workflow automation. And essentially that's kind of like what Asana also is. And so we know that you help them or help these nonprofits migrate to Asana, which is in essence cloud-based. So when you're having these discussions with the organizations, what are some of the benefits that you're going over for them to explain like why using something like this, which is cloud-based, is better than writing to-do lists or sending emails? Like, what is the benefit for these organizations who choose to adapt this level of like cloud technology?
That's a great question. So, all right, I'm going to start with one thing that one of my clients is currently experiencing: turnover, right? So they had someone leave the organization in the middle of us transitioning to Asana, and it was so easy for the CEO to just go in and reassign her tasks to other team members versus if she was just working off her to-do list, then they're working remote. So how are they going to access her to-do list? Would they need her to like take pictures, or would she have to type up this long email, or, all these things? Whereas now that her work is already in Asana, they can go in, they can see where she left off, reassign things. And it is a pandemic and we are dealing with COVID. Somebody could be out unexpectedly, and then you don't even have time for them to email you this information. It's already there and you can easily reassign. So that's one thing that I've definitely been making sure to communicate to them, because people are having to take off work unexpectedly. People do, leave the organizations, and you need to be able to keep the ball rolling. And then also, just like you mentioned earlier, being able to collaborate with team members without all of that back and forth in emails. I don't know about you, but I hate getting a million emails in a day. It slows you down. You're constantly having to check email, or you're trying to remember all these due dates or flipping through your calendar, versus you have something that's automatically every morning when you log in. It tells you what you have to do today, what's coming up over the next week. As new tasks are assigned to you, it's popping up right there on your home screen, so you can see what your workload is like for the day. Just makes it so much easier. And in terms of like collaborating with your team members, just like you said, you guys can keep each other updated on what's going on without having to send all those emails. For example, one of my clients, they have like 10 team members, right? And so they rely on each other to get their work done. So let's say you have to do a task that I have to wait for you to finish before I can do my thing. So like a lot of tasks that are dependent upon each other. And instead of me having to keep emailing you like, hey girl, what's going on? Are you almost done? Are you going to meet this deadline? You can easily just update it right there. Send a little comment like, hey, I'm finishing this up today. Or, if you have to change, you're not going to meet the deadline, you can easily change the due date in there. Leave a little comment that lets me know, versus having to email me or call me or whatever. I can just see it right there. So we're not interrupting each other's day, but we're also keeping each other in the loop. And then also, one of my clients, this is very important for them, being able to see capacity for individuals and the organization. She's like, sometimes we just get overloaded because we take on too much throughout the year without even realizing that we just don't have the capacity for it. Whereas now she can see what each team member has on their workload. So she knows who's a little overloaded or who can take a little more work, and your team members can see that too. So I'm not going to ask you to do 5 other things today when I can look and see that you're already busy, So just having that like visibility, that transparency, and being able to collaborate better are like the main benefits.
In the accounting or fiscal department, that's actually how our tasks are. Like they're very dependent on one another. So one person might be performing a reconciliation, but I can't review it until like they're done. And so I've actually, since the pandemic, begun to implement project management tools with my clients in, at least in the accounting space with things, because we're doing a monthly close. It's like, I want you to be able to see all of the tasks that we're doing and where we are in the process. And so that was a great point. But then another point you made is, I remember when I first started working with nonprofits, I came across a team member who had been with the organization for like 20 something years. And so much of the information lived in his head. And when he left, it was like a huge blow to the organization because that information left with him. And so I think if nothing else, this also definitely shows us how important it is to make sure we're documenting things, like you said, and have a place to house it and to update one another and to use that to determine, what tasks need to be done and who's supposed to do it and things like that, because it really does make a difference. Like, I mean, we were going crazy when that man left. So I'm very vocal about the perspective that I don't think people really understand what it takes to actually like run a nonprofit and like the tasks and things behind the scenes that it's required to keep a nonprofit running. I think it's often that people are just have it in their heads like these organizations are just here to serve, which they are. But in order to serve, right, you in some ways have to make sure you operate like a business. You have to make money. You have to raise funds in order to be able to deliver, your services to the community. And so team management, right, is a huge part of that, whether the people are volunteers or not, because at the end of the day, people still are needed, right? People have to get these things done. So how do you think, how does it benefit the organization as a whole when they invest in improving their team management?
I 100% agree with you on that. Like, it takes people to run the organization, right? If there are no people to run it, the organization cannot operate, it cannot function. So I definitely think it is very important to invest in your people. Like, for example, with implementing the new software, that is a change. And a lot of times people focus on the technology, they are focused on the technical aspect of the change, and they forget to invest in their people. And so if you are trying to implement this new software, but you haven't taken the time to help your people realize why they need this software, what is in it for them, you have to create the awareness and then get the buy-in, get them on board for using this. If you don't do that and you jump straight to, okay, we're going to use this new software, you guys are going to get training and it's going to be great, they are not going to be on board. It is like, no, you skipping steps, wait a minute, back up. Like, they're not going to be invested in the training. And I see that happening where people are coming to me like, hey, we've been trying out Asana for like 3 months and we are just really struggling. Our team is not wanting to use this. Like, some of our team members are just not on board with it. And, we need help. And I'm like, yeah. And once we get in and I started talking to individuals, I realized that they just do not, they're like, I don't really get the point, or, this is overwhelming. So you jump straight into trying to set up projects and stuff in there and telling people this is the new way we're going to do things. But there was no like upfront work to really think about how can I support my people through this change. And, even with the day-to-day, you have to be able to support your people, your team, because burnout, is going to lead to turnover. And then you're going to be short-staffed again, and it's just like a never-ending cycle if you don't support your people. And I even saw that like in social services, like that's a government organization, but turnover was so high and people were burned out because there's just not that support that you need. There's just not that level of support that your people need to function and do their job well. It's like we get into this work because we want to make an impact. We want to make a difference in people's lives. But if we're just constantly pouring from ourselves and we're not getting support in return, we're going to burn out, and eventually the quality of our work is going to diminish. And that ultimately impacts the people that we are supposed to be serving.
Yeah, no, that's a great That's a really great point. I think I initially had that whole like I guess I think they call it like quick start, where it's like, yeah, let's try this thing, like not realizing sometimes that like these people have been doing things the same way. Like I said, that one guy was there for like 22 years. So like he was used to doing his work the same way for all of these years. So when I was brought in to update the accounting processes and get them set up on the cloud accounting software, it's like, whoa, like I didn't sign up for all of this. And so, and essentially, it's kind of like that's the same thing, like you said. It's like I had to kind of take a step back and show them like how this is going to benefit the work that they do. And so all of the time that they're spending doing all of this manual work, there's a better way. And so I think you still get hit with the hesitancy, but I think kind of like when you start talking people through it, it's like, I'm with you, like, and then once it's actually implemented and they start to see it work, then it's like, okay, maybe you had something here. And then also just making sure like that professional development is a thing, because I noticed in the nonprofit space, sometimes it's because it's so much work and you might have like limited staff, that sometimes we get so stuck in doing things and in the day-to-day that we don't think about continuing education and how to make sure that people know even how to use the tools that you're implementing, and that when those tools then have changes or upgrades, making sure that they understand and know how to use it. Because I also saw that in the fiscal space, where it'd be like, did you know that the system could do all of these things that you're doing manually over here? Like, and it's usually because no one told them, and no one, there was nothing set up to say, okay, every quarter, maybe, we'll look at the process and see if it can be improved. And so definitely think that having those conversations coupled with the process definitely makes it better.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And that's why, like, when I'm helping my clients onboard their team to Asana, I make sure that we choose like 3 people to lead the change, right? So we have somebody who is responsible for helping set the conventions of how they will be using Asana at their organization. Then we have someone who is like the cheerleader, they're celebrating the wins, even the small wins, because we want to keep people motivated, right? And then we have someone who is communicating, like they're the person that's like building awareness, keep making sure everyone is informed of what is happening, because you don't want your staff to feel like, okay, we know that this new tool is coming. We know that maybe you're working with a consultant, and we know that there's going to be training, but that's all we know. Like, we don't have any details. And then, like with those 3 people, one of them, usually the cheerleader, the person that's celebrating the wins, is going to be the person who is going to stay up to date on all of the changes with Asana. They're going to be the person who is going to be like the champion going forward that team members can go to with questions. And also just making sure that we're setting them up for when they have new people come on board, that they can learn the tool and how we're using it without having to rely solely on your current staff, because they're working too, they have things to do. So just all those little things that you may not think about when you're like, okay, we're going to start using this new tool because it's going to help us, blah, blah, blah. But just thinking about all those little things in ways that you can support your people, like we were just talking about earlier.
Yeah, I remember when I was in corporate, they had champions of the different softwares. And so it was like, if you had questions or issues, you didn't go to your supervisor, you went to these designated champions who were designated as people who knew the system inside out. So actually, I really love that approach. I really love that approach, especially the cheerleader piece, because sometimes you need someone on the inside that's as excited as you, because these people be looking at you like, I hear you, but I like doing things how I've always done them. And, I think sometimes it takes some convincing to say, but there's a better way. And so totally agree. What's the number one thing you wish people knew about team management?
That is a great question. Let's see. The number one thing that I wish people knew about team management. I guess I would say listen to your people. You have to be able to hear them and their concerns, right? because maybe it's your team that's coming to you like, listen, we need a better way to do this. I have seen that happen where it's somebody on the team reach out like, listen, I heard about Asana and I think this can really help us, but I don't know if, I can get our leaders on board with this, right? I think it's very important to listen to the concerns of your people, because when they are feeling the pain, they're vocal about it. It means they've been feeling the pain for a little while. Like it's not just it just popped up, right? So if your people are telling you like these are the frustrations, like we're dropping the ball here, or you really need to be able to take that in and not take it personal, like you really need to be able to hear them so that you can support them. It's not always working like top down, like where only the execs and the board know what's best for the organization as a whole. You have your people who are in the trenches doing the work and you have to be able to listen to them and support them. Obviously, that doesn't mean that, you have to let them tell you what to do in all the things, right? But just you want people to feel heard and supported, and doing manual work is not supporting them. Doing everything manual and being stuck in like old school way of doing things, like because this is how we've always done it, that is not necessarily supporting your people. So I think that just hearing them and supporting them.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because they're doing the work, right? So sometimes you're so far removed, right, from that day to day that you don't really understand or know what it entails. And so that's why, too, I'm always a proponent of collaboration within the organization. We talk about collaborating with others, but sometimes we need to think about internally as well and how can we work best together. And a lot of times that's sitting down and making sure that we're hearing from the people that are in the trenches, like you said, because they can best tell you like what's working, what's not, and then maybe together, like you said, you can seek out solutions to help you, to essentially help you run better. How can you be better supported in your role? And let me rephrase. So like, what do nonprofits need to have in place or be open to in order for you to do your job best?
I would definitely say they need to make sure that they have or make the time to work together. Because I think a lot of times when people hire outside consultants, they think that you will do all the work. And that is not the case because you know your organization best, right? You are the expert at your organization. I'm the expert at this particular software and how to implement it. So we have to be able to collaborate. So I think that definitely, making sure that you have the time and that you trust the process, really, because it seems like a lot of work up front of like, okay, we have to identify these 3 people who are going to help lead this change. We have to be able to explain why we're moving to this tool and why we're doing it now. And we have to be able to explain how we're going to go about making this transition. And that may seem like a lot up front as we're just in the planning phase, right? But it sets you up for success in the long run, because listen, I'm not working without a plan. It's just not going to happen. It is not going to happen. I am a person who needs to know what is going to happen and how it's going to happen. And when you think about it, a lot of people like to say like, oh, I'm gonna just go with the flow kind of person. But in reality, when we're in the work, it sounds nice. So, I need you to be open and willing to sitting down and actually taking the time to plan those things out. And then trust in the process, like I do, excuse me. So not only do I meet with like the leaders of the organization, I'm also doing one-on-ones with your staff who need that extra support. I do a lot of one-on-one with like team leads. So who are like leading the programs or the projects so that we can really talk through how you guys currently manage these things, like step by step, walk me through this happens, then this happens, then this happens. Okay, so what's next? And who is responsible for that? Like we go through those things and a lot of times they're like, we don't even, they don't have it documented. And so once we start talking about it, they're like, well, I don't know, or just really drilling down to every single thing that has to happen for you guys to achieve the goal of this program or this project. And really being able to just sit down and really talk through that. It seems tedious, but it's the only way you're going to make sure that we have all of the details, like all of the details for your project and what needs to be done, and it's in the system. And then also something else that we do up front is really listing out, we're looking at your organizational structure, right? So we're looking at what are the different teams, who are the team leads, who are the staff members on that team, volunteers and all that, what are the responsibilities? So people need to be clear on their structure, like their teams, their managers or team leads, the roles and responsibilities, like all those things. I have them do that up front. And a lot of times people are like, oh, this was a nice activity. Or like when we're thinking about like the different programs and those different steps that have to happen, they're like, yeah, no, we don't have that documented, but this will actually be a good activity for us to do. Yes, it will, because you need to be clear on it. And it just makes it so much easier going forward to be clear on those roles and responsibilities,
Yeah, I like the level of detail that you go into, because I think sometimes people hear of the project and they think this huge undertaking, but when you break it down and you get a plan and strategy in place, it makes it more digestible because you're moving in bite-sized, steps, and it's not, which makes it less overwhelming, right? And so I love that you're talking to the team lead. I love that you're having one-on-ones, because a lot of time, even the team lead, right, may not be privy to some of the like nuances of the day-to-day that someone in the team might be experiencing. So I love that it's so detailed, because that's how you get the best outcome.
Definitely, I agree.
Yeah, so that was all I had. I really wanted to dig in. You hear about HR, I think, from the standpoint of like hiring and firing and benefits and stuff, but it's like, how do you manage a team? And that, especially now that we're working virtually, right? People are, I think, even in the aspect of just like, even if you enjoyed email prior to this, you probably feel a little bit like burnt out and overwhelmed with email alone, just because people are now also wanting to keep in touch with you more, right? Because you're not in the office. And I'm hopeful too, that I think when people see that there is a way to manage teams remotely, like you'll be more trusting, right? And there'll be more opportunities for team members, to work from home. And it also, I think, opens up the talent pool, right? So if an organization is looking for talent, that person doesn't have to be living or located where you are. It now opens up your ability to hire people who may be good candidates, but like are not located, where you are. And so I am hoping that more organizations adopt cloud technology and really see the benefits. And so Katisha, like, really thank you so much for agreeing to be interviewed. Like, I love having these conversations, because I feel like they're raw, they're candid, and people really get to see, you might on the forefront see like, oh, they're running all these programs, they're helping so many people in the community, but it takes a lot to keep these engines running. And so
can be struggling on the back end.
Struggling. Okay. I like struggling. And so, and that I was trying to peel the curtain back on these things. And so this serves to do that. And I'm just like super excited for people to really, tap into these. So please tell us where we can find you, where people can connect with you. And if people want to get, their teams onboarded to Asana, she's the one. How can people find you?
Okay, so I am on Facebook. My business page is my name, Katisha Rawls. You can also find me online, www.katisharawls.com. I am not very active on like Instagram, but you can find me on Facebook, and you can even connect with me on LinkedIn. I do a lot of like messaging, like private messaging with people on LinkedIn, just getting those one-on-one conversations and helping people kind of talk through, is this really the right tool for me. People were interested in Asana, and maybe they're not ready to hire somebody, and that's fine. I still am willing to have those conversations just to help them see if Asana is actually, the right tool for them. And then also just talking to people who are interested in working with me. So I do a lot of connecting on LinkedIn and Facebook. And then, of course, again, my website, katisharawls.com. And you can also reach me by email, hello@katisharawls.com. And
Yay!
thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You're so welcome. And I'll make sure to include all of the details, of course, so people can easily click. So thank you. So this will be edited, but Dag, you said something. So you're preferring LinkedIn over kind of like the traditional forms of social media, like Instagram and stuff like that?
Yeah. And I think part of that is just like LinkedIn has been like a comfort zone, like even before I like started a business, like if I was looking into different programs, whether it was in my community or outside of my community, I could go to LinkedIn, I mean, obviously I could do like a Google search too, but I like to go to LinkedIn and look at the people who were running these organizations, especially if I was referring my clients there. So I wanted to see like what else they have going on and, all these things. So I'm just naturally gravitate to LinkedIn.
Okay.
I mean, and I do use Facebook like regularly in my personal life too. So it's just easier. I mean, I use Instagram too, but I just feel like with the work that I do, and the clients that I've worked with, they've mostly, they always mention LinkedIn. Like,
that's good. I've told Jerisha.
Like one of my, oh, no, I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say I remember mentioning to Jerisha like a while back, I was like, depending on who your POP person is, I'm like, they're probably, for me at least, I was like, they're probably on LinkedIn, like, and less on like an Instagram. I have gotten clients from Instagram, but I just think the majority of like these nonprofit leaders, they're probably going to be hanging out on LinkedIn versus like an Instagram.
Yep. And like one of my clients, they like this year they're hiring a bunch of consultants for all different, like a lot of different things like rebranding and Asana and all these other programs. And like as we're building out their building out their Asana, like I remember her talking about they were hiring a consultant and she checked her out on LinkedIn and was like, oh, are you sure she has the capacity to handle it, work with us right now because she has all these other things going on. So I'm like, okay, you go and vet people on LinkedIn before you hire them.
Right. Let me make sure I know that, right?
Yes. That is funny. Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
I mean, and they have like, I was just gonna say they have like Facebook and Instagram, but it seems like it's more personal.
Yeah. But I guess like to Jerisha's point though, even with them personally using Facebook, if you come across something that like piques your interest, it's like, I may be on here chatting with my grandma, but I do need that in the nonprofit. So let me like table that for Monday or something like that. So
yeah, that's true.
How are you enjoying delivering your service the accelerator way versus how you were saying before that, like kind of like working in the VIP day kind of model?
Yeah, so I felt like I was doing the VIP days, and at first it was like smaller teams that were like 3 to 5 maybe, not really solopreneurs, but more like 3 to 5. But I felt like we would hop on, we would build out all these projects. Their team not really interested, or they don't really know why they're transitioning to Asana, and they're still stuck on there's nothing wrong with the way we're doing things now. And so like we would build out their workflows, and then after I was around for 30 days for support, but there would be so many questions about like actually how to use it. And then also like their team just being resistant to using it. And I was like, okay, I don't want to feel like I'm not providing enough value. Like, like I don't want people to be left kind of hanging like, okay, now what? I mean, and I probably could have just easily offered like training after the VIP day, but I'm like, No, because I'm really just doing this for my own benefit, like the in and out type of thing.
Right.
I like to get in, get the work done, and be on my way. Like, okay, bye.
See you
Like
later.
short-term projects versus like ongoing retainers, which I've done in the past when I was doing VA work. But just after a while, I get bored, and I'm like, okay, I want something new, and so I was like, okay, Katisha, are VIP days really benefiting your client like as much as they could? And that's when I realized like, no, especially when I started getting inquiries from larger teams, like with 10 to 25 people. I'm like, okay.
So you felt
First
like
of all, I'm
it's
not doing
benefiting these bigger teams like more than it was like the smaller ones?
Yeah, like this new way definitely works better for the bigger teams. And then also just helping them with that transition and getting their like supporting their people through it really because I just felt like with the VIP days there was no support for their people. It was just
Which is why they probably were so like hesitant and stuff like that. No, that's a really good point. And I noticed like too, like the bigger organizations, they like to use consultants because they too want to kind of like get the work done and like you said, move on. And so when I saw you talking about the accelerated piece, I was like, this is good because I kept trying to think about how I could transition what I do to more of a like program or because I too am like the retainers are stressful. And so what I'm trying to do is like maybe like not completely get rid of them, but cap them. So it's like we only take on a certain number of retainer clients. And when we meet the cap, unless someone doesn't renew, there's a wait list. Like the only way would be to work in this like group container. And so, but I kept thinking that organizations were going to be hesitant to that. So I'm like, I have to test it out and stuff. So to see someone else kind of doing it kind of in that way was definitely affirming. So,
so I'm not working in groups yet though. I want to make sure.
But the accelerator is more of it's still kind of one-on-one, but it's more so in the format though. Isn't it more like of a group format? More so like where you're delivering a kind of, I don't know, it's not curriculum, but almost like you're following these set steps that you would hopefully then be repeating, like if anyone went through this like accelerator.
Yeah, so yeah, the way I have it set up, like I have like set steps that I go through with each organization. So I'm working with like 3 different organizations, but I'm not like working with them together in a group. Like I'm working with them.
Okay.
But I can see myself hitting capacity very easily.
Yeah.
Doing it that way. So that's why I'm like, okay, I need to think about joining Leverage in order to create it as a group program.
Yeah, that's really kind of that's the crux of where I'm at too. So now that's good getting a little bit of clarity because I'm still like, I can't see it like yet, like how it translates to the group piece. Like, especially, like, I'm like, are they going to want to sit? Are these organizations going to want to sit in this kind of like container? But I think too is probably how you deliver it. So like maybe it's a group training and not a group program, like depending on how you like word it for especially for the organizations who kind of have like older leaders. I think they're kind of like, what is that? Like,
yeah, exactly. And that's what I was thinking. I mean, I can see a little bit of how I could like target the operations managers for a group program and teach them how to walk their organization through these steps that I'm doing. But at the same time, it's like, okay, I got to think about how am I going to support them through that? Like, I don't know that like a group coaching call is the best way because everybody's going to have their own specific needs. And how do I make sure I address all of those without being on like a 3-hour call?
Right. Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at. So I actually do like a lot of times when I do my lean launches or I'm doing social media, I will kind of say like nonprofit EDs or operations person, because I've actually been hired by EDs or the second in charge, which is like the operations person. So I know that they do have some of the juice as it relates to like decision making. And I was thinking maybe it would be like if they had like a bookkeeper or accountant on staff, like it's kind of like what you were saying, like that would be the person that would go through the program versus it being like the actual like ED or somebody, like, because that would be too detailed for them to actually be doing. But it is very useful for their bookkeeper or the person who's going to be keeping their books to learn this information. So I'm thinking about maybe tweaking it like that. And so they'll look at it like, oh, like my staff might need this training versus like I need this training.
Right. Yep, so, exactly.
Yeah, but I too am like, I'm still thinking about how that goes though, like with the whole group thing. So yeah. But this has been definitely a helpful. I was like, I'll be reading your posts in the group and I'm like, I feel like because we serve the same people, we have a lot of those same thoughts. So I'm like, oh, me too. I was wondering how to do that and stuff. And so, but yes, best of luck with everything. Thank you for spending time jumping on with me today.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Enjoy the rest of your day.